Hey guys, so I kind of want to talk today about cell phones versus actual cameras like DSLRs or mirrorless cameras, and kind of where cell phones kind of land in my opinion of you know where someone who's learning photography, where would their cell phones kind of lie in their you know in their learning process. So, first of all, I'll be breaking up this video into beginner photographers. So, anybody who's still starting off, people who are learning about photography, then intermediate, self explanatory, and advanced, which I feel like I am. But still, I got a lot to learn. There's always going to be something to learn in the arts. And also, this is not a videography video. This is mostly about photography, but that's mostly what I know. But a lot of it can coincide with videography if you put the right mindset to it. So for beginners, I think if you are really serious about photography, I would say it's not that great to use your cell phone. If you're trying to learn, if you're trying to take it seriously, you want to make it a career. If you want to get further in your photography and learning exposure and a camera, I think learning how to shoot manually, or at least learn how to shoot using all the proper, settings, and learning all the different aspects of photography and of the camera, that's really important. And you kind of do need a camera when you're first starting out. And for me, you don't need an expensive, really big price camera. You can just buy like a $600 beginner crop sensor camera. And a few I can recommend are the Rebel series for Canon and the Nikon 300 series or 3000 series. I started off in one of those. Those are great, and you can learn off the settings really, really well, and you can actually get really far and produce really good photos with those cameras. And I'm actually going to try to find some old pictures with those as well. But at the beginning of the game, beginning of your beginning stages of photography, you're getting a camera to learn mostly just exposure. That's what your first kind of big hill to tackle with, is learning to read a scene, read a place that you're gonna take a photo in, and say, oh, that's my aperture, that's my shutter, that's my ISO. Just learning the balance of all these three structures and learning how to properly expose for a scene. But again, with all of this kind of the thought process behind photography and these settings and exposures, you're gonna be wanting to learn how to nail exposure first and mess with exposure first. That's kind of my main takeaway with the absolute beginner stuff with photography. And you kind of do need a camera for that, to learn all the aspects of exposure. So while you were learning about, exposure and the settings and all of that stuff, and learning your camera a little bit more, because, if you did invest in a good camera, you would probably want to kind of keep it for a pretty long time. But yeah, once you're at intermediate level, the game kind of changes a little bit, because now you're focusing on more of the fun stuff rather than just exposure. Exposure is fun to play with, especially shutter speeds and aperture. But once you get into composition, which is in the intermediate level, your camera will kind of be a crutch to you, and the knowledge that you have of the settings will eventually become a crutch. Like, a lot of people just want shallow depth of field or really slow shutter speeds to capture, movement in a very creative way. But at the end of the day, those tend to be crutches for beginner photographers moving on to intermediate. And so that's why I feel cell phones actually belong perfectly in the intermediate level, when you're learning composition and you're learning kind of the motifs and the motives behind, the composition of a photo. So I would say, once you learn your exposure, go straight, just put down your camera, maybe use it sometimes just to keep up the skill. And if you get a gig early on, that's actually really great, and please do use your camera. But if you're still learning, if you still want to learn a little bit more about photography and mostly composition, which is probably the most important part of photography, other than, of course, light, you know, a cell phone is probably the best way. And it's because you have very little to say about, you know, a cell phone image. You can't control the shutter. You can't control, well, you can control the shutter, but it's going to be a little bit more limited. You can't control the aperture 100%. ISO, the performance on the ISO is a little bit more, you know, a bit more wild because of the sensor size. But overall, I think you're going to have a lot less control with a phone in terms of settings. So all you have to kind of rely on is your composition skills. And so leading lines, framing, you know, all these different things that you learn in composition, I think your cell phone is probably the best way to learn, because you won't have the crutch of, you know, bulking the shit out of it or slowing down the shutter for that silky smooth waterfall. Again, cell phones are really good to learn composition. And in advance, I think the best way to learn in advance is basically just whatever makes you have a better time, like whatever camera's available to you when you have that decisive moment. I think there's a quote out there, I forgot who said it, but it's a really powerful quote, which is the best camera that you have on you, the best camera that you have is the one that you have on you at all times. And the cell phone is really a good example of that. And now in modern day, a lot of cameras are, phone cameras are actually very up to par. Even though the sensor size isn't the best, their ISO performance is kind of shoddy depending on what, you know, what company you go with. But at the end of the day, they're really good and they have a lot to offer you, and they're always with you. A camera, you know, a lot of cameras that are small and light and you can carry everywhere with you, they get kind of pricey. So, you know, they're really good quality. You can get raw images that you can that you can edit to look exactly how you want it. But at the end of the day, if you don't bring your camera but you have your cell phone, it's better to capture that moment, you know, now and forever, before it just goes away. And sometimes your phone is all that you have, and that's fine, that's perfect. And you know, you're not always gonna be carrying that camera on. Maybe you go, you know, to a lunch with a friend, and you just decide, oh, it's just gonna be like a 30-minute lunch. I'm not gonna bring my camera, and then something amazing happens. Your phone is perfectly fine to take that photo. But again, if you do have your camera on you and you now know all the settings, you know the compositional skills, it's all about practice. That's kind of my ending sentence when it comes to advanced learners, which is practice, practice, practice. And I think that's why a lot of advanced photography learners start to get discouraged with photography or even the arts in any art genre, because you're not learning new things now. It's about having what you have and learning how to use it. It's not about learning this new technique, this new skill. It's about how to get all that you learned and applying it into your modern work now. So I think that's why just having your phone is a great way to learn composition, and a great secondary camera, or a forever camera, but you're always going to carry it on. But yeah, that's kind of my tirade on where cell phones land on the kind of spectrum of learning photography. At the end of the day, your best camera that you have is the one that you have on you. And your cell phone could be it, could be your DSLR, but either way, both can produce great work. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because you are the photographer. It doesn't matter what camera you have, what lens you have, what sensor size, whatever the fuck you have. It's about if you have something to capture that moment, and if you have the skills to capture it. Thank you. That's kind of my tirade. If you like this video, I'm going to be coming out with more of this type of photography, maybe some reviews here and there, but like, I just want to do more instructional stuff, just because I like it, especially about photography, the arts, and philosophical things. But yeah, hope you enjoy. Peace.